Hello and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom coming to you from Marrakesh in Morocco, where the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank are holding their annual meeting. It comes at a time when there's a great deal of tension in West Asia, with the entire situation between Israel and Hamas extremely precarious. The big development today, and we'll be talking at length about that, is an extension of the Israeli attacks to Damascus and Aleppo in Syria. The airports of both of these cities have been bombed. Air traffic into both of these airports not possible, with Israel stating at some levels that this was being done to ensure that Syria wasn't being used as a conduit or a route to supply arms to Hamas. The other big story linked to Israel that we are tracking very closely is the evacuation of Indian students and Indian nationals in Israel who want to leave the country have been given an opportunity. The government of India has sent across, or is in the process of sending across, aircraft for the first batch of Indians who are going to actually come across. So those are a couple of the key stories that we are looking at. But I'd like to go straight across to my colleague Kadamani Sharma, who joins us at this stage, because Kadamani, the big concern has been an expansion of the warfare with airstrikes taking place on Damascus and Aleppo.
Well, Vishnu, it is not the first time that Israel has actually bombed these two places. But the thing is that it is not accepting. It has neither confirmed nor denied. I heard the guest on your show say that he is not either confirming or denying. But the fact is that this place has been, Syria has been a conduit for weaponry. And at this time, when Hamas has mounted a terrorist attack on Saturday, they do not want any more weaponry coming into Hamas through any of other countries. So this is the experts do believe that this is the reason Israel has done that. Israel is trying not to let the conflict escalate on other borders, while it is concentrating on the Gaza border, which is the main route which the Hamas terrorists took to come into south of Israel and massacre so many civilians. Now, one front is of Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is not opening a very broad front. It is more like a skirmish. So they are trying to keep the IDF engaged at certain level on that side. Missiles were anti-tank missiles were fired from Syrian side. So there is also another front. Now the messaging from Israel is quite clear. The messaging is that if you try to get into this, then you would have a cost to pay, and that is what Israel is doing again and again. It has also said there are several statements coming through for different countries that if you get into this conflict, then we will not hold back. Now, what is holding back the ground assault, which everyone is expecting to happen anytime? Now, there are hostages, more than 100 hostages, including Americans and people of other nationalities and dual citizens, who are being held in Gaza. Now, where they are held, it is still not clear. The energy minister said that the power and fuel supply will not be restored to Gaza till the hostages are released. But there is no sign of any relenting by Hamas. They are still holding on to what they have, and they are firing rockets, and they are giving statements which are not very conciliatory. So this is, at the moment, there is no ground assault taking place, but of course at the border there is such a fortification. You would see tanks, you would see military vehicles, you would see numbers and scores of military people there. Police is there in every town. The towns have been evacuated. Most of the people have left these rural towns, settlements, or the towns which are there on the southern side of Israel. They have shifted to other places. But Israel is ready to do whatever it thinks is right after what has happened on Saturday. But at the moment, the main concern is of an escalation which the world powers are trying to avoid. Now, Secretary Blinken of United States was here today. Yesterday, James Cleverly was here. Blinken is also visiting Jordan and is expected to visit other countries, neighboring countries as well, in Arab countries as well, to diffuse this tension, to find some way where this does not escalate into a war which affects everyone in the region.
Kadamani, thank you very much for sharing all of those details. Well, joining us now, a very special guest, Alex Gandler, Deputy Spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel. Mr. Gandler, thank you very much for speaking to us. Can you confirm that Israel has struck Damascus Airport and Aleppo Airport with airstrikes in the last little while?
Allow me not to confirm or deny any such knowledge. I'm based on information such as you. I'm reading the news as well, and I saw that there might have been a strike on Syrian ground.
Have there been attacks from Syria onto Israeli territory in the last couple of days?
I'm not aware of any attacks coming from Syria. I am aware of engagements coming from a closer border in Lebanon, engagements between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah terrorists from across the border. Obviously, Hezbollah is not a state-sponsored war. I'm sorry, it's not a Lebanese official army. We're talking about terrorists that are sponsored as a proxy army by Iran.
As we understand it, Mr. Gandler, the Iranian foreign minister was on his way to Damascus in his aircraft. Shortly before he was to arrive, Damascus airport was bombed. He's had to go back. Again, I realize it may be difficult for you, but do you have any reaction to this event?
I will tell you that we are not interested in seeing any other countries getting involved, especially countries that have sponsored, trained, supplied, and mobilized the terrorist organization Hamas that attacked Israel on the morning of October 7th.
Is it your belief that weaponry bound for Hamas was being routed through Syria by Iran?
I will not elaborate on any intelligence regarding weapons that came through Syria. I can tell you that weapons have been coming into the Gaza Strip, and it's quite obvious to see which kind of weapons they are. And we know that these weapons are not Western weapons that the state of Israel is using. So it's quite easy to understand where these weapons are coming from.
So could you state directly, sir, you believe that there is an overt Iranian hand in terms of the arming of Hamas, something which has resulted in the attack this time around?
I don't want to quote anyone, especially not media outlets at the moment. I'm basing myself out of intelligence reports that we're receiving. I don't want to divulge any sensitive information that is currently will harm my country and its state of war. I will say this. We're currently fighting a war. You're used to seeing Israel having these limited operations against the Hamas terrorist organization within Gaza. This is something different completely. There is a reason why this is exclusive and this is breaking news, because it is something that is different from any other time. This is a war against Hamas. We're fighting a war for the defense of our people. We've all seen the 12,000 confirmed dead Israeli civilians on the border. Hamas coming into homes of civilians that were trying to shed themselves and their children in safe rooms, burning those homes down. Unfortunately, in the last several days, I was privy to videos that were taken from Gaza. In Israel, we had a decision about 20 years ago to decide not to show the public any horrifying images from those days where suicide bombers used to blow themselves up in Israeli buses. We're rethinking that thought right now. I've seen some of the images coming out of what happened in our kibbutzes, our small towns across the border from Gaza, and they're horrifying. They're just horrifying to watch.
Absolutely. I was speaking to a kibbutz leader earlier on today, sir, and those are absolutely horrific situations. But I'm just trying to understand, what is the overall Israeli death toll at this juncture? Is it 1,200? Is that what you are looking at this stage?
Yes, absolutely. Confirmed. We have 1,200. I can say that around 800 have been identified. The fact that we need to identify bodies tells you the story of what happened.
Yes. There is also a humanitarian crisis being played out in Gaza at this juncture. Would it be fair for me to say that the restoration of food, water, electricity might happen if the hostages being held in the Gaza Strip are returned?
I can't set any terms right now for what will happen with the Gaza Strip if any hostages are returned. First of all, we want all our hostages returned. We have around, and it's an estimated number because not everyone has been accounted for. Some of them are still unaccounted for because they're presumed either as a hostage or someone who was killed in the attack. Around 130 people. That is the estimation at the moment. The humanitarian toll on the Gaza Strip is terrible. Of course. I don't think anyone can deny that things that are happening in the Gaza Strip can be better. The problem is that we're fighting an enemy that is using the civilian population in order to hide themselves. I've looked at some of that intelligence information that I was divulged to. And I looked at where the houses of the terrorists are, or where their command posts are, or MO depots are. If you'll go back 3 days and you look at when a mosque was bombed several days ago, you will see that the mosque has secondary explosions. Secondary explosions happen when you have ammo and weapons stored underneath. The gloves are pretty much off for the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli Defense Forces. We're currently in an operation, as I said, a war in order to destroy Hamas as a terrorist organization. We've had too many years of Hamas on our doorstep, shooting volleys of rockets towards our citizens. We are done. We are done, and the gloves are completely off.
Mr. Gandler, I'm just trying to understand, when we talk about a potential Israeli ground offensive, are we looking at a ground offensive towards an occupation of the Gaza Strip, or are we looking at an entry of Israeli ground soldiers in an effort at attacking Hamas?
I'm not privy to any information regarding the scope of a ground attack or how a ground attack might occur, or the tactical or strategical goals of that ground attack. And even if I was, to be honest, to tell it on live TV would be very unprofessional of me regarding the lives of our soldiers on the ground. So if there will be a ground attack, you
I appreciate that.
Scenarios. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. In terms of what you were talking to me a few moments back about how there have been secondary explosions underground, perhaps in the areas which you have struck, there have also been several reports of how there is an extensive subterranean network which exists in Gaza, where perhaps a lot of the rockets and other weaponry that we've been looking at have been assembled. Is this an Israeli concern, that what you see being bombed on top is not necessarily where a lot of this is being assembled or hidden or being operated from?
Yes, absolutely. For years and years, one of the problems, I've read an analysis regarding the Hamas power grid. The Hamas power grid, which was damaged in 2014, could have been fixed by this time. The problem was that all the funds that were given to Hamas and to the Gaza Strip, or most of the funds, were misused in order to build an underground city filled with command centers, operational rooms, barracks, weapons storage facilities underneath the entirety of the Gaza Strip. We're talking about miles and miles of tunnels. Some of those tunnels are defensive tunnels, tunnels where you hide and you operate your soldiers. Some of them are attacking tunnels that are dug towards the fence surrounding the Gaza Strip, our security fence in the border. Some of them were actually dug underneath the kibbutzes. In an operation that was held several years ago, we've destroyed those tunnels. But now this underground city of Hamas remains under the Gaza Strip. It was completely funded by all the donations given to Hamas. Some of them were given for humanitarian causes and misused in order to build this humongous infrastructure. It is easier to dig under the Gaza Strip because if you know the topography of that part of the world, the Gaza Strip is located right next to a beach. So a lot of the infrastructure is dug through sand or sandy areas, which makes it easier to dig by hand without the use of earth movers, such as things that you do in other countries to build railroads or subway systems. And they've done it. They've built another city under the Gaza Strip, and they're using it in order to maintain their terrorist cells and terrorist capabilities.
Sure. Well, just one or two more questions, sir. There are Indian nationals in Israel. We are, of course, extremely close partners with your country who are now in the process of evacuating. The first flight is going to be flying them out later on today. What is your message to those Indians who actually are leaving Israel at this stage? It's a moment of great sadness for them as well. They've come to enjoy, love Israel, study there, work there, everything. What is your message to those who from India who are now having to leave Israel?
And it's a very sad day to hear that, to be honest, because I have a great connection to the Indian people. I visited India. It was my wife's birthday present to me for my 30th birthday. A lot of Israelis have deep connections to India and to the Indian people, and so do Indian people to Israel. They're leaving for a limited time. They will come back. Israelis will come back to visit India. Those Israelis that are now flying to Israel to join their army units. And Indians that have lived here and worked here and studied here and enjoyed their life here will come back to visit us again. This will end at some point. Israel is a strong and vibrant country. We enjoy a very good relationship with the country of India. This is a moment. This is a moment, but it's a fleeting moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Gandler, very much for speaking to us, being as forthright as possible under the circumstances. Do take care of yourself and your family at this very difficult time. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and thank you to the people of India.
All right, well, joining us now, Professor Bernard Haeckel from Princeton University. Thank you, Professor Haeckel, for being with us. As you know, there has been an extension of the strikes now hitting Damascus and Aleppo. Is this, in a sense, a worst-case scenario unfolding in front of our eyes?
Well, there's always a threat that this war can expand beyond Gaza to include Lebanon and Syria, and also ultimately Iran. And the Americans have been very clear that they don't want the Iranians to meddle in this war or to intervene in any way, either directly or through their proxies, one of which is Hezbollah, the organization in Lebanon. And I suspect that, although I don't have actual proof, it's speculation, but I suspect that there were weapons that were being sent to Hezbollah in Lebanon through Syria, and the Israelis blew these weapons up, as they have habitually done for many years now.
What about these strikes? Do you believe that this is some sort of a signal, some sort of a message which is being sent to Iran at this juncture and to other players that, look, stay away from the situation which is developed in Gaza?
Yeah, there have been actually many signals to Iran. The President of the United States very clearly in his speech yesterday told, Iran, didn't mention Iran, but it was very clear that he was pointing to Iran, that they are not to get involved in this war. And the aircraft carrier battle group that has been sent to Israel by the United States is a clear sign that of deterrence to try to warn Iran not to get involved. Again, either directly or indirectly through its proxies. And the Americans said they would send even more ships. So it's clear the Americans are sending a signal that they would get involved in this war if it were to broaden beyond Israel and the Palestinian territories.
What do you believe an Israeli move into the Gaza Strip could actually achieve? Do you believe that the intention would be narrow and tactical and an effort to hit out at Hamas in terms of a military operation, or do you believe that we could be looking at some sort of occupation of the Gaza Strip?
Well, if what the Israeli politicians have said and the prime minister has said, which is that they aim to destroy Hamas completely, to do that you need to occupy or reoccupy the Gaza Strip. The Israelis left in 2005 and have had several wars with Hamas, never fully reoccupying the Gaza Strip. But this time, if they really want to get rid of Hamas, they would have to do so. And that would involve the loss of many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Palestinian lives. Both militants and civilians. And it would also cost Israel a huge amount of dead and injured soldiers. And that's something that would be very costly for Israel as well. So I think that, and also Hamas is prepared for this invasion. Hamas knew in attacking Israel in the way that it did, that the Israelis would counterattack and probably seek to invade the Gaza Strip. So they're prepared with all kinds of weapons, again, mainly from Iran, that would, for instance, take out tanks, mines, booby traps, and so on. It would be very, very bloody, war, alleyways, street to street, house to house battles, like the Americans fought, for instance, in Fallujah in Iraq. And that's a very, very tough way to wage war, and it's very costly. Because your tactical and military technological advantage doesn't really help much. It's really a man-to-man sort of fight.
Sure.
And there, Hamas would make Israel pay a very heavy price.
All right, Professor Hakel, thank you very much for joining us, sharing that perspective. The days and perhaps weeks and months, who knows, ahead seem to be quite fraught with tension and dangers. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking to us. Well, earlier on today, India announced that it's going to start the process of evacuating Indian nationals from Israel, those who choose to go. There's a list which has actually been formed. This primarily pertains to Indian students who are in Israel. It's a project called Operation Ajay. India has had a fantastic record in the past of getting out Indian nationals from areas which have seen strife and war, whether it's Ukraine, Yemen, or in this case, Israel as well. So that process has just about started in Israel. This is what the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson had to say.
Aware of the developments in Israel, as announced by External Affairs Minister yesterday, Operation Ajay has been launched to facilitate the return from Israel of our citizens who wish to come back. The first charter flight will be reaching Tel Aviv later tonight to pick up Indian citizens and is likely to return to India tomorrow morning. We will share with you information about further flights as they are finalized. This is still an evolving situation. You are aware, External Affairs Minister took a preparatory meeting earlier in the day. We're also in touch with our, of course, with our embassy in Tel Aviv, our representative office in Ramallah, as well as with our neighboring, the missions in our neighboring, in the neighboring countries there.
All right, the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson there. But joining us now, Deborah Ann Samuel, an Indian student studying at the University of Haifa, and Naren Thapa, an Indian in Israel, runs an NGO. Deborah, let me come to you first. Are you interested in evacuating, getting back to India?
My current position is no, but I have registered and on the link which the embassy has sent, and it depends on how the situation evolves in the country.
And what is the advice that you're actually getting? Is it entirely optional, or is there some sort of recommendation from the embassy that, look, perhaps it is time for you to leave?
No, it is an optional, it is our option. It is for those who wish to leave the country, and it is not mandatory.
Do you feel a little bit more secure where you are, Haifa, which is to the north of the country? Of course, there have been attacks, some of which have hit Haifa as well. But do you feel relatively safe now or quite insecure?
I am a student at the University of Haifa, but I'm currently in Jerusalem with my brother, and we relatively feel safe and calm. So, and we have been doing things together, like international students community coming together, and we've tried to keep our spirits up and encourage each other, just be with each other. So we feel safe and we feel calm here.
Naren Thapa, you are an Indian national. You run an NGO in Israel. Where exactly are you based, and how concerned are you, in terms of your personal safety, that of your friends and family, as a result of these attacks?
Okay, Jai Gorkha to everyone. So I'm in central part of Israel, which is the city of Rehovot. I'm right now. So we really care about our nationals in Israel. So actually we are more concerned about those people working in caregiving sector. So we have been in touch with Indian embassy all the time. So embassy is giving us lots of support. So what I would like to say through this message is that those caregiving people working on caregiving sectors are not harmed, and there are some people who are working in the border of Lebanon and Jordan, and especially those workers who are working in Ascalon. We are in touch with them. We have made a special WhatsApp group for them. So in case of emergency, whatever emergency happens, we convey a message to the embassy, and embassy is all the time to help us. So what I would like to say, we are pretty cool and safe here right now.
Naren, has there been any sign of the attacks, rocket attacks in the area where you're at, or it's not extended, fortunately, in that direction?
Unfortunately, yes, because this where I'm right now is central area Rehoboth. So the day one when there was a barrage of rockets, so this places central Israel was the main point of target. So definitely we are going through such situation.
Could you describe, Naren, what you saw and heard?
So in the morning, day one, all of a sudden, when we were sleeping at 6:30 in the morning, we used to hear a siren alarming that something is coming. As we are used to this because it's been a long time that we are in Israel, so it's quite scary. So as soon as we hear the siren and we followed the instruction of the home command, that we ran away for the safety in the shelters to hide ourselves. So accordingly, we gave instructions to different various groups of Indian workers that we need to follow the home instructions. So it was really scary experience.
Sure, I can imagine. Deborah, is it your sense that the biggest threat or worry for you personally will come if this war actually extends to beyond the boundaries of Israel, to include other countries such as Lebanon and possibly even Syria in a bigger way than what we've seen?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat that question again?
Is it your worry that this could become a much worse situation if the war extends to beyond Israel's boundaries?
During this time, we are surrounded by a lot of news and panic, but we've tried to remain calm. And we have support from our family, and the ambassador has also sent his support to all Indian citizens in the country, and they are closely monitoring what's been happening. And they've assured us that they will do the necessary in case the worst should happen. So I am not extremely worried because I'm trying to stay calm and not panic in this situation.
All right, and Naren, you must have friends back home who must be extremely concerned about you. Is that a big worry now, assuring family that for the moment you are safe?
Yeah, definitely. The family in India, not only all those workers who are here, they are worried about the family, and vice versa. The family are worried about us too. So, but we are organized and we are united, and we always send a message through our NGO that we all are safe here, and all the precaution measures has been taken. And on this kind of scenario, we feel more protected as the Indian embassy, the way they are extending their help to us, whether it is day or night, anytime, whenever we ask any kind of guidance to them, they are always ready to support us. And they write a message like, each and every Indian matters. Until one Indian remains in Israel, the embassy will be there standing back to support us. So this kind of message gives us the courage to stay, and the courage to give assurance to our family that we are okay.
So I do hope that both of you and your friends over there in Israel do remain safe. Thank you very much for joining us at a time when that option to actually evacuate has been given to Indian nationals, and many will be on their way back starting later today. Some breaking news coming in. The Prime Minister of Israel's office says that Hamas has burnt children. The very disturbing images have in fact been shared on Twitter with a warning over there, and these images have also been shared to the US, to the visiting US Secretary, Mr. Blinken. That is obviously a huge concern on atrocities against children, a point that has been coming up over the last 24 hours, which has now been confirmed. All right, we're going to go across to NDTV's Kadamani Sharma, who joins us at the stage. Kadamani, this is an important, point which has just come in the last little while. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has, confirmed that there have been atrocities which have taken place against children. What details of this can you share? Kadamani, go ahead.
Pictures which have been released by Prime Minister of Israel office from the official handle, and these are the pictures of babies who have been killed, and these are quite disturbing pictures, horrifying pictures as a matter of fact. Now these are the pictures which the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu apparently showed US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Now this becomes important in the context that when it was reported first about babies being burnt and killed, there were several people were questioning whether it really did happen. Now there were some distractions about the detailing of these killings, but now it has come directly from Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister of Israel's office. He has posted the picture as well, and there are 3 pictures which are so disturbing that it cannot be put on air. But these are the pictures which he has shown Secretary of State Antony Blinken of US, and this is it looks as if it has been presented as a proof of what Hamas did in the southern towns, where they went around on a rampage. The terrorists went around on a rampage and slaughtered families and people. So these are just a few pictures which have been shared. Most of us haven't seen these pictures, and they have not been shared publicly like this before. But now, from the official handle of Prime Minister of Israel, these pictures have been shared, and very disturbing pictures, very horrifying pictures have been shared, and these are now in front of the world. Vishnu?
All right, absolutely horrific. We'll thank you very much, Kadamani, for sharing those details and for bringing us all these reports over the last several days. Earlier on today, I spoke to Adrian Levy, one of the finest analysts and writers looking into this present situation, the war between Israel and Hamas. Here's what he told me. Thanks very much, Mr. Levy, for being with us. Is it your sense that hostages for food and water appears to be the current Israeli strategy?
Yeah, I think it's actually not clear what the current Israeli strategy is, other than that troops amassing 300,000 plus reservists and full-time members of the IDF. I think no clear plan has evolved yet because there hasn't been time. We've only seen the Cabinet of National Reconciliation getting itself together now, and so, no doubt they will be looking to forge a way forward. It's got to be said that, while Israel has the right to hit back against these monstrous acts that have taken place and are only now becoming clear their true severity, it also has to be mindful of creating further terror, impoverishment and alienation amongst the Palestinian people by razing Gaza to the ground and, in effect, having been warned not to commit war crimes itself.
Is it not your belief that perhaps the lull, in a sense, in the fighting that we are seeing now, apart from aerial bombardment, the ground offensive hasn't begun, that if this can be called a lull, it is possibly because there are active negotiations to try and get those hostages out? And if those hostages are taken out, then perhaps there would be a resumption of electricity, food and water.
Yeah, I think there are active back channels that are taking place. Obviously, Turkey has been involved, Egypt, and other powers. The US has attempted to weigh into in its own way. And you're right that there is a quid pro quo. But one way is increasingly looking like collective punishment for Palestinian people rather than resolving the security issues and the need for justice for Israelis and Israeli and Jewish victims of the Hamas onslaught.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to look at the situation in Gaza as well, and refer to some of the points which you mentioned just a few moments back, that there is an enormous humanitarian tragedy potentially building up over there. It's important to discriminate between terrorists and people who have nothing to do with terrorism at all. Could you give us your assessment of what the ground situation in Gaza is?
Yes, I mean, it's devastating and going to be devastatingly difficult, actually, both for the Palestinians who are living there who do not support Hamas and have been told glibly to leave but cannot. There is no place for them to go, but also for IDF, for boots on the ground. It's a treacherous operation. 4 previous operations like this have been tried. Israel got out of Gaza initially because it couldn't retain it and didn't want to. When Hamas took over from Fatah, immediately, it began to go on the offensive. There are no easy winners here. What we undoubtedly are going to see is a protracted incursion. And, history tells us, if we just look at what happened post 9/11, that vengeance is not the best response to terror. America went down that route and ended up undoing its own rules-bound system. It's really important to remember what happened in terms of torture, disappearances, black sites. The CIA are still trying to deal with the consequences of that now, and there's been no justice for the 9/11 families because no one has been tried and convicted for the crimes committed on 9/11. And it's worth looking at that and that failure when considering what Israel's rightful move should be in the face of this terror.
Is it your sense that the Israeli goal at this stage is not just about Hamas, but also about ensuring that the Palestinian Authority, as we see it now, essentially ceases to exist as an effective instrument of governance?
Well, I think this is a very tricky one because Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, has been in power effectively for more or less 14 years. And during that time has made this process moribund. It does not exist. They've marginalized Fatah and Ramallah, the power base there for Palestinians, and they have created a ghetto within Gaza for Hamas. There is no reckoning for this. There is no two-party solution that is being engaged in or proffered. And we're seeing the entrails of a Trumpist policy, because under Trump with Jared Kushner, what we saw was the imposition of a single state. And the consequences of that are being played out right now. This is also a problem for America because the Biden administration is not akin to the Trump strategy of ignoring in totality the Palestinian needs and demands. And so it's an extraordinarily tricky situation. It's existential for Jews, 45% of whom live in Israel, and it's existential for Palestinians. Yes. And if we look at the forces that are massing right now in Syria, in Lebanon, on the Egyptian border, in Gaza, within the West Bank, but also because of prejudice and discrimination within the Arab population inside Israel, there is a real crisis brewing that is both regional and local.
It's interesting that you mentioned Egypt among several of the other nations. Now, Egypt has rejected, I'm told, and this is just news in the last couple of hours, setting up safe corridors for refugees fleeing Gaza. How significant is that as a position? Because it comes following news that, in fact, Egypt was considering sending in humanitarian supplies, news of which really triggered an Israeli response where Tel Aviv said, no, that is something we will not accept. So Egypt now making the statement that, look, safe corridors, we aren't going to set that up. How significant is that?
Look, it's devastating. On one hand, the Palestinians cannot be told to flee and to leave, and on the other hand, have nowhere to go. This is, potentially a humanitarian disaster, a catastrophe that's happening. Egypt does not want to be in its current position with its instabilities that are taking place in its economic crisis and political crisis, does not want to be the home to refugees. But where are the refugees going to go? Unless a safe corridor can be set up, which will involve some finessing also with the hostage crisis, then what we're going to see is a massive deterioration. No power, no water. We're talking about women, children, young adults having nowhere to go.
What is the role of the United States presently?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because the US has had a tricky relationship under Biden with Netanyahu, and the cabinet of extremists really that have pushed Israel further to the right have created a political paralysis within Israel, but also an enormous amount of disdain and distaste in the international community that don't want to deal with them. And so now they have to rapidly reheat that relationship with the new cabinet of national reconciliation and an attempt to find a path. And yet, there is no easy path for America, because if it attaches itself to a campaign that morphs into something hideously violent and misproportionate or disproportionate, then there will be enormous backfire on America itself. So it's a difficult path that the Americans are trying to tread right now. And of course, they also want to keep alive the Saudi attempts at a peace deal, which at this moment are well on the back burner, of course.
I'm interested to know what you think of the Saudi position, because some would suggest that, the peace process which was in the works between Israel and the Arab world, of course, Saudi Arabia key over there, is now essentially rolled back. It doesn't effectively exist because of the statements made by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which have entirely endorsed, the Palestinian cause, the cause of people in Gaza. With that said, is it not important to remember that Qatar and Saudi Arabia still have a very important role, possibly in terms of getting these hostages out? So, it's a twofold tricky situation. You need Saudi Arabia and Qatar to get the hostages out potentially. On the other hand, the peace process between Israel and, say, Saudi Arabia appears to be over essentially.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of focus on the Gulf states and particularly on Saudi Arabia. I mean, the first thing to say is that there's a mass international failure to engage in Israel-Palestine. This has been absolutely moribund, and particularly coming through Trump into Biden, it's been deliberately stifled. And so what we've seen is a build-up of frustrations and anger, and no political runway offered to the Palestinian people, and instead they've endured. On the other hand, the Saudi deal was looking for some basic recognitions from the Netanyahu cabinet in order to normalize relationships, which would be historic. But how will a cabinet of extremities, including a minister who self-describes as a fascist, sign up to that deal? It's going to be extraordinarily difficult. But another important point to think of right now is that we are entering and are in the midst of multipolarity. So what we're seeing is new interlocutors. We're seeing a softening of power and an introspection with America, the rise of Iran as an interlocutor, the rise of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, China. Look at the back channels that are taking place in Yemen right now. The US is not involved in those. So there may be a regional solution. There may be a wider Gulf and Middle East solution that begins to come into play that will obviate the need for America to play the key role that it intends for itself.
A final question to you. What is the end game potentially for Israel once they do go in? As you mentioned correctly, it's been very difficult to hold on in terms of being an occupation force. There is overwhelming resentment on the ground. There are millions of people in Gaza presently, and yet the Israelis have put themselves into a position, perhaps correctly so, that, look, we need to act now because there's been violence on our territory, our people have been killed. But assuming they do go in, what would the end game then be?
I think this is the problem, and probably what they're defining is what the parameters of a boots-on-ground operation are. Is it to decapitate Hamas? Is it to recover the hostages? Is it to assert Israel's right to exist and the Jews' right to live in Israel? And until they can actually, work out the strategic objectives, it's difficult to answer that question. I think there is no focus yet on a medium term and a long term because of the scale of the suffering and the killing. And yet a cautious approach is going to be needed with regional voices weighing in to avoid an enormous, conflagration which takes in the entire region. I don't think it is clear as yet what the limited goals are and what an endgame might look like. But evidently what will be important is an intelligence triage, a political audit, and the name of the person that will be attached to this crisis, perhaps the worst in Israel's history, will be Benjamin Netanyahu. And so weighing up even for this Teflon character who has had extraordinary five-act political acts and bounced back when everyone presumed he was dead in the water, facing criminal and corruption charges himself. What will happen to him and how will he endure and his coalition? These are all things to play out in the medium to long term.
Adrian Levy, thank you very much for speaking to us, sharing your thoughts on this developing situation. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Well, to give us an idea of how normal citizens in Israel continue to be taken away into bunkers, evacuated from their homes, and some of the conditions over there at a time when a ground offensive seems to be imminent, we're joined by Danielle Dahari, a teacher who has been evacuated and a member of the Kibbutz Council. Danielle, thanks very much for being with us. Where exactly were you evacuated from? And could you share with us an idea of the conditions where you are now located?
We came from the southeast kibbutz in our council, just between Egypt to Gaza. We came to Eilat on Sunday night after we went to the safety room on Saturday morning. We woke up to the alarm and the bombing from Gaza Strip. We took the kids and just ran inside. We tried to close the door and the handle broke, so we could open it only from the inside. And apparently it was the perfect things to happen, because 20 minutes later we got a message that we need to stay inside and lock the house and we can't go out, and if someone has a weapon to take it with him. But they didn't say that there are terrorists inside. We thought it just precaution. And when the time went by and we didn't hear the play, the Israeli Air Force started bombing, and we heard the shooting, and we heard that they're still shooting at us, the rockets and everything. We understood that something really bad happened. And we were just waiting to get some news. We didn't have cellular connection. We only had Wi-Fi that we needed to go out from the safe room to get it, so we couldn't get the notifications on time. It was only one for all 30 minutes. We went out to get something to know what is going on outside, and only afternoon, I think, we got a real idea of what's going on outside. And apparently more than 20 terrorists went inside the kibbutz, and our civilians from the kibbutz were the ones to save us all this time. On Saturday night, in the middle of the night, we got a message that we need to be prepared for evacuation, but they don't know when it will happen,
right,
or to where to go, nothing. And it was, I don't know how to say it. It was
No, I can
terrifying.
imagine, Danielle. It's a horrific situation.
You
and
can't.
Fortunately,
you can't. This
you
is
are
what people.
okay, and I'm glad that you are in a.
You can't imagine. We are in Eilat now, but the fear and the terror that we went, no one can understand it. My kids saw me peeing in a plastic bag because we couldn't go to the toilet. And we went, me and my husband, he was going out with me with the gun to bring water and food because the kids were hungry. We couldn't eat, we couldn't drink. We came here to Eilat when we were hydrated. We're still, our body is walking on air. We can't eat, we can't sleep, we can't talk. we can't even imagine
Danielle,
what
thank
we
you
went
so
through.
much for speaking to us and actually letting us know what exactly you've been going through. But fortunately, you are out of that area alive, and we certainly hope for your well-being. Thank you so much for speaking to us.